This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the potential revival of Scalebound, the massive milestone reached by Steam, Xbox 360 is getting native PC ports, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 74. I am your host, the man whose face loads in as jagged polygons, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who has FSR 4.0 enabled in real life, Justin, better known as I'm Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been relatively, well, not busy in the sense of getting stuff done, but I guess busy in the sense that just so much with work going on. There were several things that I knew would need to be accomplished earlier this week, and so Saturday I said I'll have that time for myself. So I just was like, I'm a game Saturday. But Sunday, I was like, all right, I gotta do this work now. So doing stuff for my job, and then I didn't really get to finish everything. And then so I was spending some time Monday evening after a gaming session doing some stuff, and then even last night I was doing some more stuff. And most of it is done. The problem is, like, whenever I was finishing one thing, another thing was gonna be popping up. So it was really just trying to catch up on everything. So I'm hoping that by tomorrow evening, all this stuff will be behind me. Because I'm gonna try seeing. Maybe not. I don't think I'll do anything tonight, but just trying to get everything done on that end. But that's that. The other day, I was going to send this to you, but by the time I had finished, just like trying to check and make sure everything was still working, it was pretty much all gone. Amazon had not a sale, but they were selling Steam codes for delisted games that were available. So like they had Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2. They had Deadpool, the Deadpool game.
Okay.
There was one older Mortal Kombat game, and then Transformers Rise of the Dark Spark. Like those were the games, and I think there was one more, but I can't remember what that one was. But I managed to get several of them. I got the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games, which I'll partially talk about later on, and then the Mortal Kombat game, I was able to get that, but I wasn't able to grab any of the other games. Like I said, by the time I was going to also forward you to let you know about that, but it was pretty much all gone. The downside was that these were all pretty much full price, so you're going to be paying $40 to $50 per game. But I mean, I feel like considering how hard it is to find these games, if you're going to go like on some key site, they're going to be upcharging you probably like $100, plus dollars. So I thought that's fine for what it is. So for what I was able to get, that was cool. There's something that I saw the other day though that was very interesting, and it's something that eventually I'll talk more in depth about, but it's something that I thought was really cool, and I fortunately I was in time to buy pretty much the only item in stock, which, because it's a very one of a kind type of thing, and it's very interesting. I thought it was very cool how this was set up, and like I said, I will talk about that at a later date. Because I'm waiting. It's gonna be a while for it to arrive because it's coming from overseas, but it was very interesting. And then the last thing I'll talk about is I was contemplating doing this before, but after seeing some of the reviews today, or at least the ones that I had seen online, I'm possibly thinking about getting the RX 9070 XT, just based on the performance reviews that I've seen thus far, because initially I have a RX 6650 XT that I was going to use in my future main build as sort of like as a secondary pass through GPU. But seeing as how decently the 9070 is XT, I should say, 9070 XT is performing, I think I might instead get that as the secondary GPU and use the 6650 XT as the primary build in the as the primary GPU in the PC that I'm currently using. But so I'll see. I might wait. I might see like maybe a few more reviews and see how that happens. I might wait till a little after launch, which is tomorrow actually, and see what happens there and hear if like anything happens. But I was impressed enough by what I saw that I thought, yeah, that's pretty interesting. I might get that. But yeah, that is everything that's happened with me this past week.
That's cool. Yeah, I was actually looking up the 9070 earlier just because I was curious about. I mean, like I knew that the price is pretty good for what they're selling. I'm just not even sure if it. I'm guessing probably I need a new motherboard and everything to be able to use that card. But I was just looking because I've been like getting to the point where pretty soon I'll be getting bonus from work, and then also we have tax returns, and I'm just looking at different things, potential things. Like one of the things I had mentioned before that I was looking at potentially getting like a laptop just so that I would have something primarily for like doing the podcast when traveling and just having another computer option that's not my work computer, because I don't really want to take my tower with me because it's way too big, and our car's already full, going out to my in-laws place and everything for 2 weeks. So but yeah, I haven't really decided on anything. I will say though that there is a good chance I will end up getting a new monitor, getting an OLED monitor. I found one that I'm looking at that's very tempting. And it's 1440p OLED. It has like a special feature that's supposed to help reduce or prevent burn-in, which is really good. Still 240 hertz. So basically the idea would be that I would take what's currently my third monitor, which is technically, it's like the first monitor I bought that I've been using since 2016 when I did my first build. Put that on the secondary computer in our other bedroom, and then take my current main monitor, put that over in its place, and then put the new monitor in the middle. So that's something I'm very seriously considering doing. I would say it's probably going to happen, but part of it just depends on what kind of bonus I get and what I can figure out about like building a mini PC, because I don't want something that's super. I don't need something that's fancy. Like initially I was thinking, oh, I'll get something that's going to be like capable of playing Destiny and that sort of thing. And while technically I could do that even with a weaker PC, it doesn't have to be super strong. I think realistically, if I was going to build something that I would be using for that kind of purpose, I would rather it be at least around the power of my current PC. Well, I should say at least in terms of the GPU, but I mean, like laptops are so expensive, and while it's possible that my person that I normally go through to get my PC parts might be able to get me a good deal, he's so busy that it's really hard to get a hold of him. So I don't know. I haven't figured out exactly what I'm doing with that, but I'm at least looking at different options and thinking through how I want to do things. Because the main thing is like I want primarily, if I'm doing stuff that's extra, that's not or that's basically for me, that I would be using my bonus for it instead of using our tax return. Because I mean, we have enough tax return to where I could build a brand new PC and still have lots of money left over. But considering the fact that that's really supposed to be mostly for taking care of stuff for my family and everything, it's better that I don't use it for that. So I don't know. I just need to look into different options, see what I can find. I mean, if I could find a laptop even that was like about as powerful as the one I got for the church, which I'm not sure of like how much VRAM it has, but it has a a mobile version of the 3070 in it, which to me would be, plenty good enough theoretically, but I don't know what kind of VRAM the mobile version of the GPU is compared with the standard version. Because I think the standard 3070 is like 8 to 10 gigs of VRAM. I'm not positive on that. I want to say it's somewhere around there because I know 2080 Ti is 10 gigs. So I don't know. But anyway, I'm looking at different options, trying to see what I can figure out because I want to be as cost efficient as possible, get something that will do what I need it to do, but not go overboard on the cost. So, but anyway, as far as my week goes, apart from those side notes, first of all, just because I forgot to show it to you last week, so I had some Nintendo Platinum points that have just been doing nothing forever, and I basically didn't think they were worth much of anything. But I did manage to find a couple things that were worth grabbing. So first thing I grabbed was a Tears of the Kingdom keychain.
Oh,
it's pretty cool. I mean, I have so many things on my keychain right now that I'll probably still attach it, but it's kind of ridiculous. But this one you're really gonna like. Metroid Prime Remastered pins. I haven't decided where I'm going to attach them because in my experience, anytime I attach pins to my backpack, they always end up coming loose, and so I may hang it up on the cork board that I have behind my monitor here. I haven't quite decided, but anyway. But yes, as far as my week goes otherwise, so first of all, Saturday, it may have actually been Friday that I first heard about this. So some friends of ours from our previous church, they were looking to rehome a puppy, and don't know exactly what breeds she is. It's theorized based on her coloring, because, well, I should say she was adopted from the Humane Society, but things were just not really working out for her at their house. Not because she wasn't a good puppy or she wasn't sweet and everything, just it just wasn't working out with their family. So they're looking to rehome her, and we think she's like a mix of some type of shepherd as well as a spaniel. So we're not entirely sure, but really cute, really pretty dog. And so, we were like, well, we haven't gotten a second dog in, these past 10 years, mostly because our dog doesn't really get along with other dogs. He just was never socialized because we got him when he was 4.5 weeks old. And so we just never did a good job socializing him. So, we weren't entirely sure, but we figured, okay, well, they're not charging, they're not asking anyone to pay for it. And so we just had the puppy come over and, see how she and our dog interacted, and there didn't seem to be any issues at all. So on Monday, we adopted her. So we now have a second dog. Her name is Indiana Bones. That's her full name. Indy, obviously, for short. And I mean, I think her name was actually only Indiana, but then I decided today, we should name her Indiana Bones. That should be her full name. Which, I mean, besides the fact that it's punny, and it's obvious reference to Indiana Jones, because he was named after the dog, or he named himself after the dog. But anyway, it's a much shorter name than like my dad named his dog when they had adopted her. She was a German Shepherd Golden Retriever mix, and her main name was Thor, or Thunder, and her full name that my dad gave her was Thor Thunderdog, ruler of the heavenly realms. By her bark the foundations of the earth tremble. All other canines bow down before her and worship and adore her, except for Sasha, sister of Satan, ruler of the underworld. And Sasha was their other dog, who basically just she and Thunder were like kind of basically like sisters, where they'll get along sometimes and then other times they're not getting along so well. But Thunder, the way she would bark was she had this loud, high-pitched bark when she was jealous. And she was a big dog. I mean, she's half German Shepherd. And so she's, she was a pretty big dog, and she was just the sweetest dog I've ever had. But anyway, so yes, um, Indiana Bones is a much shorter name. Maybe I'll
Definitely.
try to come up with a more complicated name in honor of my dad. But we'll see about that. But anyway, so yes, we now have a new puppy, and she's housebroken-ish. She's still not quite kennel trained. And she doesn't have a problem with going to the bathroom in general, except when she gets excited or scared, and then she pees a little bit, and so it's kind of like, okay, we're figuring this out. Thankfully, we don't have we only have one area rug in our house, and the rest of the floors are wood, so it's easier to clean up. But it's still just we're still trying to figure it out because we've only had her for a few days. But she is great with the kids. Which is exactly one of the reasons we wanted another dog, is because my older dog has never been good with the kids because he was the first one in the family, and I guess he thinks he's the alpha or something, but he was great with them when they were little, but as they got older, he just growls at them. He's never bitten them or hurt them or anything, but he's just grouchy around them. So, but she's been great so far. Does seem like she's more my wife's dog, whereas our giant 10-year-old puppy is my dog, very much so. But anyway, so yeah, that's the big thing. Did music on Sunday. We're not leading this week, but I'm gonna be playing this week because our other guy who normally does guitar for the third guy who leads, or really the other guy who leads the singing, he's out of town for the next 2 weeks, so they need someone to play the guitar, so I'm going to be playing. I just won't be doing the leading, and I don't have to pick out songs, so there's that at least. But apart from that, I don't think there's really been anything else major. I didn't work on I didn't do a cooking video yet. I haven't gotten to it. Something I do want to note, and it's kind of just still in the works right now, is I'm going to be putting both stuff for the podcast and for all of my other channels on Rumble. I'm going to be adding it to that. So it's not going to be just on YouTube. It'll be on YouTube and Rumble. One thing that I found that's actually really nice about Rumble is that you don't have to create a separate account for each channel. You can have one account and then have multiple channels on that one account, which is super useful, because I hate the fact that with YouTube you have to have a separate email address for each account. This one you can just have one email address and have a bunch of channels all listed under that, so that'll be super useful. I'm hoping to work it out to where I can potentially multi-stream to Rumble when it comes to the time of doing streams, but more than anything, I just want to have another place for all the different videos that I do, because YouTube is just so oversaturated that it's really hard to get much of any views or anything, and you really just kind of open yourself up to a new audience going on Rumble. So it's in the works. Nothing is on there yet except for starting to put together the channels, but I haven't uploaded anything yet because I basically just messed with it today. So I'm planning to work on that this weekend. I don't know if I'll have time to do any recording for the next comparison, but I think before I even get to that, I want to start getting some stuff uploaded to Rumble channels and see what I can do from there, because I really want it to be part of the thing, since YouTube just seems like it's... I mean, my channels have grown, but not enough to where it's not like I'm earning anything from them. And I think Rumble is another potential source of revenue. So it doesn't really require any extra work, just a little more time to upload. But I think that's about it in terms of my week. There's probably something else I'm forgetting, but I mean, I guess one thing is that my wife had gotten me a gift card for one of the restaurants that I like, that we hardly ever go to just because we don't go out that often. and so we went out as a family today. I used that gift card towards the cost, or well, technically it's a little more complicated than that, but point is that it was good. So but anyway, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of things. So with Rumble, are you able to say you upload on? Are you able to sort of link it to YouTube, where if you
Might be able
upload
to.
on there?
I'm hoping so. I would think that theoretically they should have a way to do that. I just haven't messed with it enough, because I like basically just briefly like started creating the channels earlier this evening. One thing that I didn't realize initially that you could have multiple channels on a single account, instead of using my existing Rumble account, I could have just added all the channels there. I had created a separate account and started putting the channels on, and then I realized, oh, I might want to put this on my other account, because my other account has Rumble Premium, which I'm not specifically subscribed to Rumble Premium. I just happen to have it through a different source. Long story. But yeah, so I'm going to look into that, and I'm going to see, I want to look into multi-streaming and everything, and hopefully figure all that out before doing my extra live stream this month.
Okay. And congrats on the new puppy, especially since you not necessarily concerns, but you were talking about how you weren't certain how your current dog would react to having another dog in the house. So I'm glad that they're getting along. Now, one question I actually did have though is, how often did someone say the full name of
it was pretty much only my dad who ever said the full name, and even then he didn't say it all the time, because this was many years ago. They got her in 2007, and then unfortunately she got really sick and had to be put down in 2009, I believe. But she was like 3 years old when they got her, so yeah, it was very sad, because we all loved her. She would jump up onto your arm to get hugs. She was seriously the sweetest dog, and there's some really funny pictures of my dad having her as an oversized lap dog, and her tongue like hanging out the side of her mouth and stuff, and it was hilarious. But yeah. So anyway, what have you been playing this week?
So I started a game which is one of the games from that I got from Fanatical in one of their bundles, called Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. It is a Metroidvania, a sprite-based Metroidvania game, and it's interesting in some degrees because it plays sort of like a Castlevania type of game, in like an Igavania, but some of the combat is interesting because you have a pistol that you use to fire, but you essentially only get one round. You can get up to 4 rounds as you unlock it through the through the skill tree, but you essentially have one round that you can use, and once you fire it, you have to attack enemies and build up enough, build up enough mana until you can actually use it again, which makes for an interesting mechanic because it encourages you to keep attacking in order to use your gun again. Additionally, you use you use the mana that you have to use special attacks, which I'm not entirely certain how I feel about, because essentially you only have your regular light attacks, and if you use a heavy attack, that counts as a special attack.
Oh, okay.
So essentially you have to consistently use light attacks to build up enough mana for you to actually use a heavy attack, until you can eventually, like I said, recharge it and eventually unlock, more rounds for you to use. And additionally, this is one that I definitely feel like I'm not really a fan of, is the fact that you have a dodge roll that has a recharge, that recharges, and you can essentially do one dodge roll. You have to wait maybe about 2 or 3 seconds for it to refill again. Then you can do another dodge roll, which I really don't see a reason for that needing to exist. I mean, I feel like it creates more hassle than it needs to be, especially if you're. I mean, fortunately, there aren't too many times where you're surrounded by a bunch of enemies, but I feel like in the cases where, and this primarily has happened with, I guess, some bosses that I found where I need to dodge and then, try to get some hits in, and then hopefully my dodge will refill before I have to dodge again. Otherwise, I will just get hit. And I mean, fortunately, it doesn't seem like the game doesn't seem to be too difficult, and you do have your sort of healing flasks, which kind of play sort of like a Souls game because you use them up, but if you go to a save point, then it refills up and you go about your business. And fortunately, it's pretty simple. Like, you're finding enough items where you can upgrade it and you get more heals. So I've never really been in a situation where I would say, oh man, I wish I had some more healing going around. Only probably, I'd say, the very early part of the game. Well, not the very early, but slightly early in the game, where there's like one area where enemies hit pretty hard and I don't have enough like experience points to upgrade yet, or at least I can't upgrade yet because that mechanic hasn't been introduced to me yet. So I feel like before that point and then after that point, it's not a big deal with healing, so I don't really care too much. Story's okay-ish. It's nothing extraordinary, but I feel like this is probably one of the more story-driven Metroidvanias that I've played in quite some time. But so far, I'm definitely enjoying it, and I'll see what happens. I've heard that the ending is a bit of a letdown because of something that happens, but I'm going to wait and see if what people say is actually true or not. I'm hoping it's not based on what I've played so far, because I feel like the story is leading to a point where there's something that should happen, but we'll see. I'll see when that point comes. But yeah, so far this is definitely enjoyable. Now, I mentioned Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and this is actually a game that I had wanted to play a long time ago, and I've seen it and I was like, oh, that's a game I want to try. I want to get that game. I want to play that game, but I never did. And I know that like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, that wasn't on any system that I owned, so I couldn't play that one. But I decided, I see the game is available. I'm gonna buy it, try it out. Surprisingly, it actually works pretty well on the Steam Deck right out of the box. Running at 60 FPS. And actually, I'll quickly make a quick note about Gestalt. Oddly enough, it seems like it's only locked at 60 FPS, and or at least on the Steam Deck, and I haven't been able to boost the frame rate, which is weird. And occasionally there might be a couple stuttering moments, and I think that happened more so in the recording than it actually happened while I was playing. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention that. But Marvel Ultimate Alliance, it's running pretty well. Sadly, there aren't too many graphic settings, so you can't really do too much tweaking with anything.
Yeah.
But it runs, and that's fine with me. Now, I didn't play too much of the game just because I was really just testing to see how it ran and also see how the game actually played. It's gonna be something that if I play this, a bit more right now, I'm gonna have to get used to the controls, because for one thing, so many modern games have X or square or Y if you're on the Switch controller as a light attack, and then of course you use Y or triangle as the heavy attack. But this one uses A and B as the light and heavy attacks, which is I'm having time. I need to adjust to that type of control, because the left face button is for grabbing, which I keep using because I keep thinking about I'm trying to attack. And I like the fact that you can switch between the different characters. And I know that you eventually can unlock more. But I right now, like trying also to figure out all the controls, because you have special abilities for each character, and trying to adjust that is something that I'm hoping, as I learn them, helps differentiate between the characters, or at least how they feel and how they play, because they pretty much feel all the same to me right now. I don't know if that'll change later on, especially if I get characters that are more projectile based. But it's interesting so far, I'll say. And I do, one thing I will say is that I do kind of like this, even though this game came out, I think at least in 2016, or at least it did on PC, it is still in that area before the MCU fully took center stage. So you do have sort of a more comic centric style with a lot of the characters, and some of the characters are more so designed based on their comic style rather than their MCU styles. So that I sort of appreciated in that aspect. But yeah, so there's that. And then lastly, I played Core Keeper. A friend and I, we were just playing that the other day. We went to see just what to do, and we tried that out. It's kind of like Terraria in a sense, which I mean you could say is kind of like Minecraft, but it's like Terraria but with classes.
Okay.
So you could be sort of a generic. You could have a generic class that is very flexible, or you could have something like a warrior class. You could have a wizard. You could have a chef, an explorer, and I think an archer and a miner. But primarily, sort of like with Terraria, you're just trying to explore around, trying to sort of create a base, expand upon it. Eventually, you can find NPCs who move in and who offer different services, like a merchant, which I think is which so far is the only one we found, and that was after we faced the first boss. And then, of course, you can find special items and then try to craft different things and so on and so forth. So it's pretty nice in that end. I'm not certain if it's where we've gone to, but there does seem to be a bit of a difficulty spike depending on where you go, because there were these goblins and I think a mage, and the goblins at the very least, they hit very hard, where even though we're wearing like bronze or copper armor, one hit takes out 2/3 of our health, which is which we regretted our decision to go after the goblins at that point. But yeah, so we're trying to just still keep getting better gear and crafting and whatnot. But the game is definitely fun. And I think that also it's easier to pick up than Terraria, because Terraria, I feel I needed more time to actually learn the controls and also learn what I'm supposed to do or how things worked. Whereas with Core Keeper, it seems more accessible. It seems easier to pick up and play. And I feel like I kind of skipped the tutorial because I was just trying to create a character and jump into the multiplayer. So I think I skipped the tutorial, but I feel like if there was one, it would make learning so much easier. And I already felt like I didn't have any difficulty with learning the controls already. So if there was a tutorial, that would make things a whole lot easier. But yeah, that is essentially everything I've played.
All right. Well, couple things. First of all, Marvel Ultimate Alliance. So I haven't played either of the first two games. Even if I had known that they were available, I probably wouldn't have bought them though. I have the third one, which is exclusive to Switch. And I played a tiny bit of that, but I just tried playing it co-op with my wife, and we just weren't really getting into it. It's something that maybe one of these days I might actually try seeing if I can play with my boys. Actually, probably realistically, I could probably play with all three kids, because I'm pretty sure it has 4-player local co-op. So that might be worth checking out. Although I think it's supposed to be kind of hard. I know my nephews tried it out, and they told me that it was pretty hard for them. And I mean, granted, obviously, I'm a lot more experienced than they are, but my kids aren't. And even though my oldest son probably would have an easier time, I'm not sure about the other two. So, and then with Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder, I definitely like the look of it. I'm glad that you told me about some of those mechanics, particularly like the single dodge with the recharge and the gun having only one shot and that sort of thing. Because like looking at this, it looks like it would be pretty fun, and those features, at least knowing about them ahead of time, makes it so it doesn't bother me as much. It's like Diablo has kind of a similar thing with the dodge, where that is Diablo 3. has that similar thing with the dodge, where you can only dodge so much. Or maybe I'm thinking of Diablo 4. I can't remember Diablo 3 because Diablo 3 I hardly ever used the dodge because like the console version has the dodge, but the PC version doesn't. So I'm probably thinking of Diablo 4. But yeah, so the dodge is like something you can only use a little bit. But otherwise, I mean, looking at it looked pretty fun. I love the the thing where you find the corgi because corgis crack me up. I mean, like that's one of the only small dogs I would ever actually want because I just think they're hilarious, just how they look and they're adorable. So yes, I like corgis.
Yeah, there are a bunch of them in the game that you actually have to go and find as one of the
Nice.
Side quests.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, all that being said, I think the game looks pretty cool. And, hearing Egavania type thing, I mean, of course, looking at it, that's immediately what it made me think of. And, some of the Souls-like elements, it's just like, yep, this looks like it's basically checks multiple boxes of my favorite types of games right now. So definitely something I'll check out one of these days. Or, God willing, I mean, obviously there's a lot in my library already, but yeah, looks cool. All right, so as far as what I've been playing, I'm gonna do these in reverse order, mostly because that kind of determines how much time I spent on each one. So first of all, I'll mention, because I hadn't planned on playing it, but I ended up just booting it up this evening, decided to install it on my desktop and see what I could do with it in terms of visuals and performance, even though it's capped at 60 frames. And that's Neo. I went ahead and installed that this evening, tried it out briefly. Basically just did one of the side missions that I hadn't quite completed everything in. Otherwise, I didn't play it at all this week. I basically just played it a little bit this evening, but as expected, looks and runs great on my PC. The one thing I will say though, and I'm not sure if this is specifically like just an issue with the 4K resolution or if it just doesn't like doing 4K because I don't have a 4K display, but I tried doing 4K and the frame rate dropped to like 12 frames per second. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. I mean, it was 4K resolution with all the settings maxed out, which there's really no reason why my computer shouldn't be able to do it. So I'm wondering if it's just an issue with the 4K resolution in general, or maybe if it just doesn't like it because of not having a 4K display. I don't know. But anyway, I did end up putting it at 1440p and could still get 60 frames with all the settings maxed out. So that worked out fine. But yeah, I didn't play, like I said, I didn't really play a lot because of one of the other games that I was playing this week. I was definitely rusty on the controls, and that was a bit annoying. I mean, I did fine, I was able to get through the mission, but I died more than I probably would have had I not been so rusty. So, but the game that I played quite a bit more than that, still not a ton, but more than Neo, was Dark Souls 2. I just went ahead and booted that up again. But anyway, so yeah, I played some Dark Souls 2. I didn't really make much of any progress. I basically just killed enemies in one of the areas after after that boss. Like I had done a little bit of wandering around after I beat the one boss, the last giant that that I had beaten last week. And there's this area, I can't remember the name of the camp exactly that I went into, but it's just like this small area that's connected to the underground area that ultimately leads down to where the last giant is. And it's just an area that I had completely skipped over because I didn't know it was there before. And so, yeah, let me see if I can find the actual name of it because I had it. Soldier's Retreat is the name of the area. So it's just like this small camp that has a handful of different enemies, and a bonfire, which is the main thing. But it has a bunch of those armored turtle guys, the ones with the hammers. You'd probably know what I was talking about if you saw them. It's just like basically like knights that look like they have big turtle shells on their backs and they hold like giant metal hammers. But it has like a handful of those and some other things. The main thing though is that like when I initially went in, there's this invader that always gets summoned immediately when you go in, at least until you kill him. Dark Spirit Armorer Dennis. And oh man, that guy was pissing me off so much for a while there, because it's like, I thought, okay, well, well, maybe it's because I regained my humanity and that's why he's showing up. And, you know, after I died, nope, he's still showing up and kept showing up and kept killing me very, very quickly. And then finally I was like, okay, looking it up. All right, what's the best way I can take care of this guy? And someone mentioned you can just knock him off the ledge, because there's like, right when you walk out the door, there's basically a chasm in between the two sides of the area. And so, you know, once I figured that out, I was able to work on him enough to knock him off the edge, and then he was dead. But I really haven't done much of anything else apart from that. I haven't found any other new areas yet. I'm still kind of working on it. I basically just spent a little bit of time grinding. I got my what you call it, that stat for dodging, what's that called again? It's like it's on the tip. Adaptability, thank you. Yes. I got that up to 20 and did a little leveling besides that, but yeah, so like I said, haven't really done a whole lot with this. I need to figure out where to go next if I'm going to play more, and I probably will keep playing. It's mostly an issue of, honestly, it's trying to figure out whether I would rather keep playing this or go back to Neo and just focus on that, because since they control so differently, when I was playing Neo after playing this for a while, I was messing up on really mostly the A and B functions, because A you use for dodging in Neo, or at least that's how I have it set up, and B is for interacting with stuff. And I guess what I could potentially do is I could always change the controls in Neo's to where it controls the same as it does in Dark Souls 2, and that way it's not throwing me off so much. But yeah, so not sure what I'm doing yet. More than anything, I just need to figure out where to go next. But in the meantime, I was just kind of grinding through, especially once you told me that after a certain point, enemies stop respawning. So I was kind of thinking, maybe I'll just hang around this area and kill stuff and kill everything until they stop respawning. And then after that, I'll just move on to a different area. But I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. But anyway, that being said, getting into some of the other things that I've been playing. So there's this channel that I follow who just reached 500 subscribers, and he was giving out codes for Monster Hunter Rise Monster Hunter Wilds. And I was like, I don't expect that the code's going to work. I'm sure that these have already been claimed by now, but I'll check it out. It can't hurt to try. And sure enough, this channel, I Am Zeracon, just, gave me this code that happened to work. And so I got Monster Hunter Wilds. Now, I didn't play a lot. I will say that, as everyone has been saying, the performance on PC is terrible. It is awful. And I mean, even when I try to mix up the settings a bit, it doesn't look very good. Like, a lot of the textures really look like there's something out of the PS3. I think Rise looks significantly better than this game. Although the animations in this game are better, the actual visuals, I think, are worse. And the performance is much worse. That being said, so let me just say, basically, with the settings that I have, which is I've kind of fiddled with them. I haven't really been able to come up with anything that gives me the performance I'm looking for. Basically, I'm getting 45 to 60 is pretty average. Occasionally in the camp, it'll drop down to like high 30s, low 40s. but in short, it's not good enough for me to be willing to like really play this. However, I will say what I played, it is pretty fun. Um, there are some nice quality of life improvements in this game over previous Monster Hunters, because like Rise, I think already did a lot to really like speed up things, especially gathering and just movement compared with the previous games. And of course, the fact that you don't have to use paintballs, which was something that I was more used to with Monster Hunter 3 and 4, and I guess even up through Generations and Generations Ultimate. But like there's some of the quality of life things. There's this grappling thing you have. So in Rise, you already had like the wire bug thing that you use, and you could use it for like recovery and for getting higher up on environments and stuff like that. And of course, you had the mount that would let you get further up. But this one has like a grapple thing. It's like attached to your arm. I'm trying to think of what you would call it exactly. I don't remember what they call it in the game. But you can use it for like picking up items that you see in the environment, which is super nifty. Like that's way faster. It's like you literally just like you hold down the button and then press B and it grabs the item, and instead of having to go up to it. I mean, Rise I think already did a good job because of the fact that it changed it so that you don't have to stop and get down to pick up items, that you can literally just run by it and press B and it'll grab it as you're going, which was already a huge improvement. But that improvement was that improvement that they added to Wilds is really good. The other thing that they added that I initially wasn't sure about, but ultimately have decided I do like, is after you hit certain points for a while, the enemy will basically get I guess you could say scars really on their body, that if you focus, which is just holding left trigger or L2, then it like highlights them, and then if you press right button or R1, then it will focus the attacks on those points, so it does more damage to them. So I thought that was a pretty cool feature as well. But then, like in terms of the actual combat, I mean, once again, like I said, frame rate, I'm typically getting 45 to 60, which if I was doing this on the Steam Deck, I would be perfectly happy with that. On my PC, I'm not happy with it because it should run a lot better. It's not visually anywhere near as good looking as like Horizon Forbidden West, for example, which is an extremely good looking game and runs so much better. And really, I don't think that this one is doing significantly more in terms of its visual. I mean, like in terms of its visuals, it's definitely not doing as much. The only thing I could say maybe it's doing a little bit more is like general animations, like with the monsters. For example, the one that's in this footage that I'm playing right now, like the monsters skin folds like kind of sway as they're moving, which is something that I haven't really noticed as much in the older Monster Hunter games. But regardless of anything else, I do not think this game performs anywhere near as well as it should. It has, of course, sold extremely well. I mean, I don't know the exact sales numbers, but they said that like the opening weekend, it was something like 1.5 million people on Steam alone had bought the game, which is saying quite a bit. Combat feels really good. It took me a little bit to refamiliarize myself with the with the controls, because like I'm using Charge Blade because that's been my favorite since Monster Hunter 4. Once I started remembering how to properly charge and use all of its attacks, then it's like, okay, yeah, now this all is bringing back memories. I'm getting my muscle memory back, and then I was really enjoying that aspect of it. But I still just think this game does not look as it's not so much the visuals that bother me, it's more so the performance. I just wish this game performed better. I've tried various fixes that I found online, including a mod that was supposed to help, and it really hasn't done enough. Um, at least not enough to where it hasn't actually improved things in any noticeable way. So I basically just have kind of given up on that. The one thing I haven't tried, and this is just more based off of a video I recently watched and some things I'd been hearing for a while. So some people had been saying that having all your RAM slots filled, if your CPU isn't really designed to handle that much, may not actually benefit you as much as just having 2 slots filled. And so I think I may try this game and maybe some others as well, just taking out that extra 32 gigs of RAM and seeing what kind of difference it makes. Because if just having the 32 gigs somehow makes it perform better, because I mean, it's definitely not using all 64 gigs, then that may end up being a better solution. And so I'm at least going to look into that, see if that helps with Monster Hunter Wilds. I'm not expecting it to have a real difference, but even if it doesn't help with that game, it might help with other games where I'm maybe not getting as high of a frame rate as I would like. Even though, usually the vast majority of games, I'm getting a minimum of 70 frames per second. A lot of times, anywhere from 80 to 120 and things like that. But yeah, so I will at least check that out, see if it makes a difference. But yeah, I definitely had no plans to buy this game if it wasn't for the fact that this great channel, I Am Zeracon, just happened to post these codes, and they just happened to have not been claimed yet. I would not have gotten this game. But I'm impressed with how the game plays. I'm just not impressed with the actual performance of the game, and I'm not impressed with the visuals. I think both of those need a lot of work, and I'm hoping that Capcom is actually going to make an effort to better optimize this game for PC, because there just doesn't seem to be a good reason why it's running so poorly. Last thing I do want to note, and I will fix this if I'm correct on this matter, is that the stutters in the video here are probably an OBS issue. That was the case with Returnal last week, and I fixed it in the final version of the video. I'll do the same thing for the final version of this video, if indeed that is the case. So that, I think, is everything I have to say about Wilds. But I'm at least willing to keep trying to see if I can get this game running better, because it is fun. I haven't been impressed with a lot of things about it. I just think they say that it's done, and it's polished. I think that it's polished in some ways, but not as much as it should be, particularly for PC. So, all right, that's all I'm going to say about Wilds. But what I will say is, because of the fact that I was so unsatisfied with the performance of Wilds and kind of had that itch to play Monster Hunter, I went ahead and reinstalled Monster Hunter Rise, and I installed that both on the Steam Deck and on my PC, because I hadn't previously played it on my PC. Now, the footage that's here is just footage from the Steam Deck. The reason for that is because while I do have footage recorded from my PC and runs really well, there's no big monsters being fought, so the footage I have here is just from Steam Deck. Quickly, I'll say Steam Deck, of course, even running at what is the equivalent of 1080p, because I'm running at 150% resolution, I'm getting locked 60 frames per second, and that's basically, I think settings are more or less maxed out. I did turn off anti-aliasing just because I think, at least on the small screen, it looks better without the anti-aliasing. But yeah, so it runs great, looks great. I think that even though the environments are less complex than those in Wilds, the game, I think, looks way better than Wilds does. And performs way better too. And on my desktop, I'm getting minimum of I think there are like some occasions where it'll drop down to like the 105 to 110 frames per second. Most of the time I'm getting minimum of 120 going up to like 160 frames per second with all settings maxed out at 1440p, because it's 150% resolution is what I'm running it at. So yeah, it's runs amazing on my desktop. I didn't play a ton there. I basically just played a bit so that I could test it out more than anything. I think I fought a few monsters and then ended up playing more on my Steam Deck. But I haven't fully decided like how much I'm playing this. I will say though that as usual, the game looks and runs great, and just Monster Hunter is fun. When you're fighting the big monsters, it is a lot of fun. And of course, the fact that Rise has just those quality of life improvements to make the game faster, especially like gathering and that sort of thing. And then, having like the quick recovery and everything with the wire bug is really cool. But yeah, so if I hadn't, the only real reason that I didn't play more of this today, because I basically played it mostly yesterday, I would probably still be playing this, but the only real reason I'm not is because I decided to boot up Dark Souls 2 again. So, but with all that being said, there is one game that ended up taking up most of my gaming time this week, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy. I got so after last week, like I still had it booted up on my Steam Deck. I hadn't specifically planned to play a lot, but I was like, okay, well, it's still booted up. I'll play for a little bit and then I'll save and close and go back to some of my other games. But it was like I played for a little bit and I'm like, I want to keep playing. So I kept playing and that kept happening. And I kept playing. And I played so much that I ended up finishing the game. So I will say, first of all, of course, Steam Deck, I was still able to get pretty consistent 40 frames per second. I was, very happy with visuals and performance on the deck. Even at the low settings, it was still good. And the 40 frames I felt perfectly fine. Like I wasn't really having issues with frame drops, at least nothing noticeable for the vast majority of the time. On my desktop, on the low end of the frame rate, I was getting around 84 to 90 frames per second. And this is with all settings maxed out, minus ray tracing. With ray tracing, it drops the frame rate down by like 15 to 20. And I had it on for a little bit and then just decided to turn it off. But yeah, so on the high end of frame rate, pretty consistently, I was getting in the 140 range. And this game looks incredible. It plays really well. The characters are so well done. Like, they are... I think that the versions that they had for the MCU were exceedingly well done and were just, perfectly cast. But these are just as perfectly cast as the MCU versions. And I think that the story itself, being someone who's not familiar with the comics at all, the story itself was on par, if not better, with the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And I really, really enjoyed it. The humor was great as always. The story was great. The music was great. I had all the regular, classic music on, that's normally included, which the game does have the option to turn off all the licensed music so that, like, if you're streaming it, you don't have to worry about copyright claims. You can turn off all that stuff, and it has its own soundtrack. I haven't listened to that version of the soundtrack at all, just because I was only playing it on my own, so I was enjoying all of that. It's funny, the fight that's being displayed here, there was initially... So, all right, let me back up. So, every once in a while you'll get like a team special where it'll give more or less your entire team essentially infinite ability spam for a while, like super fast recharge rate. And so you'll have like a huddle with your team, and then when you successfully motivate them, with a rousing speech, then it'll be playing one of these classic songs. Be like, you're listening to it on your old school Walkman, cassette Walkman. And there's one time in this fight particularly where the final countdown is playing, and if you're familiar with that one, anyway, it was like a perfect song having that playing. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that the enemies in this particular area just infinitely respawn until you go through this door you're supposed to go through. And so like I was hoping that it would, like, I'd be ending the fight right as the song ended, and I kept, because I didn't go to that door, they just kept coming, and then the song ended. It's like, dang it, that would have been such a perfect way to end it. But yeah, I cannot say enough good things about this game. I absolutely loved it. I haven't yet decided when/if I'm going to go for all of the remaining achievements. Most of them are just kind of grindy stuff, and then some of them are finding collectibles that I missed. I may do some of that during my Extra Life stream. I haven't decided yet, but regardless, this is an excellent game. I'm not sure exactly how many hours I had altogether in the game. Let's see if I can bring up Steam here. I know it wasn't much. I think it was probably under 20 hours to complete the entire game, minus, the remaining achievements. So yeah, just over 20 hours is what it took me to finish the story. So yeah, it was great. I absolutely love this game. I have to say, this is probably one of my favorite short games that I've played in a long time. And yeah, it's just great. So I don't really have anything else to say about it, but yeah, that's all my games.
All right. While we're on the topic of Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm definitely glad you enjoyed it, and you enjoyed it so much that you kept playing it to the point where you just, whoa, I beat the game. And I'll also add this one thing, which I kind of could say, kind of like, while it's good that there are a lot of games that have content that you can have longer experiences, I think there are starting to be too few, I guess you could say, AAA or even, I guess to a degree, AA games where you have those more compact gaming experiences where you can play through a campaign in like 20 hours or so. I feel like a lot of them are stretching things out to where you have like 40 or 50, 60, 70 hour plus campaigns, and it's like, sometimes it's good to have these shorter story campaigns, because you can have something where you can get through it, you can have a good time, and once you get to the end of the game, you might not be too burned out to get the rest of the achievements, or you might even feel inclined to play the game all over again. So I do kind of appreciate it when you do have these relatively shorter games that are being made. And I think it's definitely cool that you can have, now actually that's actually a question I have. Do you get to choose the songs that play, or are they like automatically pre-selected?
So there, in the story, I mean, in the main game, like apart from when you're back on your ship, the songs that play are just dependent upon which set of like dialogue you get for the huddles, and then depending on whether or not you're successful. I'm not sure if it plays the same song whether you're successful or not, because I only had one unsuccessful one where I botched the speech. I chose the wrong option. But I think that, I know that there's at least one song for every one of those different huddles, depending on what your teammates say to you before you give your little speech. So then it doesn't tell you what song it's going to play. It just picks a song, usually something themed based on what was being said. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty cool mechanic, though, to do the huddles that can help influence your super attack later on and stuff. So I think that's kind of cool. Now, there's something that I mean, granted, there were a lot of issues with this game, but all those issues aside, do you think if Suicide Squad adopted I guess, I guess the style, whereas you have one single character that you play as and you sort of command the other characters, do you think if Suicide Squad adapted that instead of having having that type of multiplayer grindy game that it was, do you think having the gameplay mechanics similar to that would have helped it or not?
Well, of course, I can't speak based on actually having played the game because I never played it. I can only go based off of what I've seen of gameplay and that sort of thing. I think that the gameplay was half of the problem and the other half was the story. And it's like, okay, so if you went with the gameplay of Guardians of the Galaxy, but you still had the terrible story, it wouldn't matter because, yeah. And I mean, I've heard from some people really like the gameplay of Suicide Squad, but some people also liked the story. And, you know, I think that they're wrong. They have bad taste, but whatever. So I don't know. I think that game was, unfortunately, it would have just had to have been, I think if it had been made at a different time, not trying to chase the live service thing, it probably could have been really good. But the problem is, of course, that it was trying to chase the live service thing. So it did everything wrong. And then, of course, on top of that, it had, you know, the bad influence of Sweet Baby, among other things, that just made the story horrendous. So.
And then one more Guardians question I have is, was there ever any sort of DLC or expansion that you would feel like, oh, okay? Because I was going to say,
if there was, I would absolutely get it if there was, but there isn't. And I think actually, I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like this game didn't sell well enough to where they'd even consider making a sequel, which is really unfortunate, because if they made a second game, I would be all over it. It would probably be a day one purchase because I enjoyed this game that much, but I don't think that's coming. I'm pretty sure that it didn't sell well enough because it just, you know, came out at a bad time and people didn't buy it enough. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I might be mixing it up with another game in another studio. I keep meaning to look that up, and then the only times I think about it are the times when I don't have the time to look it up. So
okay. And I won't dwell too much on this because we're going to discuss this, but you answered one of the questions I was going to have about Monster Hunter Wilds, which was, were you playing this on your PC or desktop? Because I was hoping you were going to say, I'm sorry, your PC or your Steam Deck, because I was hoping you were going to say it was on the Steam Deck because of the performance you were getting, but when you said desktop, I thought, oh man, no.
Yeah.
But
no, if that was the performance on the Steam Deck, I would be perfectly happy with that. Oh. Because a portable device, I don't expect as much out of, especially, you know, something as weak as the Steam Deck. But no, actually, Oh No, It's Alex did tests on the Steam Deck, and it was bad. Like, it was in the low, I think like low 20s most of the time. And it didn't look good either. I think it was like with FSR turned on, it was just awful. But I figured it was probably going to be that way, even if it had run decently on, you know, even if it had run better on PC, I think it would have run poorly on the Steam Deck, especially after we saw the specs, you know, a couple months ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's definitely a real shame too, because I mean, the game's running on the RE engine, which is the same engine used for Wilds, and I mean, also pretty much every Resident Evil game since I think 7. And and there have been no issues. So I think it's primarily just Capcom not optimizing the game well enough and doing what they should have to make this game run better. And the fact that they say, I mean, as far as like when the recommended specs to get 60 FPS, playing with a 2060, and you need to turn on frame gen
Right.
at 1080p. I'm thinking, what? just get 60 FPS? That's ridiculous. So it's definitely weird that it's that it's performing the way it is. And additionally, well, I think I'll save that for when we discuss Wilds in more detail. But one question I do also have just about the gameplay is, does it play more like Rise or World, in your opinion?
I think it's basically the best of both. Now, granted, I didn't play World, but just from having watched footage of the game, it has the open world aspects of World, and more of the like general feel, I think, of World, but it has the quality of life improvements that Rise added as well. Although, at least so far, there's no wire bug, and I'm not sure if that's something that comes up later. I think they may have just replaced the wire bug with the grapple thingy that you have instead. But yeah.
Okay. Can you ride Palamutes like you could in Rise, or is that gone?
Yes, except it's not Palamutes anymore. It's some kind of bird creature. I can't remember what they're called.
Chocobos.
I can't remember what they're called. Because I haven't played really that much. I played like maybe an hour. My Steam playtime shows longer than that, but that's more just because I spent a lot of time messing around with the settings trying to get it fixed. So it's like, this is one time where console fans are correct that messing around with settings was something we're having to do because this game is so poorly optimized. And still not satisfied with the settings, especially because it's like Rise. Literally, I didn't have to do much of anything. I turned up all the settings to maximum, and yes, granted, it was originally a Switch game, but turn all the settings to maximum, and I'm getting 120 to 150, 160 frames per second constantly, like the whole time. And I still think Rise looks better. I think really one of the problems with this, it's not necessarily that the graphics themselves are bad. It's just that the textures are like muddy. And that's something that really separates it. Because like the textures are much cleaner in honestly, even in like Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. And yes, of course, those are much lower resolution in terms of, they're a lot lower detail and everything like that because it was originally a 3DS game and then ported to the Switch. But the textures just look cleaner because of that. And I'm not necessarily saying, everything needs to be shiny, but I just mean, I don't know, if you look at the visuals, at least on my footage, and it's not the case with people who have more powerful rigs as much, but the textures just look really like... muddy is the only way I can think to describe them. It's just not nearly as clear as it should be. So, I don't know.
Okay. No, that question I'm gonna bring that up later. So yeah, I think I'm done. I'm good with questions now, just because I want to save that for the later topic. But yeah, I'm good now.
All right, sounds good. Okay. Well, I guess if there's nothing else, we can go ahead and get into the news. So since we're already on the subject, might as well talk about Monster Hunter Wilds, particularly what it has done, amongst many other games, with Steam hitting 40 million concurrent players following the Monster Hunter Wilds launch, which is a huge milestone for Steam. I don't know if it is I feel like there might be another time when it actually got significantly higher, but it's still the highest number of concurrent players in a very long time, if not the highest of all time. Um, and for anyone who's not quite understanding this isn't saying there's 40 million total people who use Steam. This is 40 million people who are all playing at the same time. Steam has, I think they said like an estimated 100 and, or maybe it was 300 something million. I can't remember what the actual figure was, but it's a lot. And I should have pulled that up beforehand. I know Ono and Alex was covering it earlier in one of his recent videos, but either way, it's 40 million concurrent players with just one game being the main driver for this, even though obviously people weren't all playing this game, because it was around 100, it's about 1.4 million people that were playing this concurrently at the peak over the weekend, and I think it sold more than that. But regardless, what are your thoughts on all this?
It's a very mixed bag, in my opinion. Like, I think first off, it's pretty cool that 40 million people, were playing on Steam at the same time, which, kind of dispels the illusion that PC gaming is dead or PC gaming is dying when, it's reaching new highs, with a new record, hitting new records, which, kind of goes against that that notion, doesn't it? So that's cool, and it's nice on one hand that that Monster Hunter Wilds is hitting the peak that it is, as far as being a game where with like a high number of people playing at the same time. However, as good as that is, I don't think it deserves it. Like, I don't think the game does, with the performance that the game is giving, Capcom should have done better. And especially since Capcom has said they wanted PC to be, I can't remember if it was a leading or a main platform that they would develop for. So Capcom releasing the game in the state that it is inexcusable. It definitely should have been performing so much better and looked better as well, as you've said. And it's just real shame because there were 1.38 million people playing at the same time, which shows that the market is definitely there, but they didn't give the effort of the market being there, which is a real shame. And I think even making it worse is the fact that they charge $70 for the game, and it's not performing like it would be $70, which sort of like that. People say you pay what you get what you pay for, but and the fact that what was the other one? The other one, which I know, PlayStation fanboys use something about along the fact that you're getting better quality if you're paying the $70 price tag, and it's like, well, this game's $70, but where's the quality in that $70? Which is definitely a real shame there. And people, I mean, the game is mixed on Steam because of the performance that it gets, and it shouldn't be this way. Like I was saying before, the game is running on RE engine, which is the same engine that Rise used. It's the same engine that the Resident Evil games use, and those games, you can get good performance, you can get good graphics. So why the game is performing the way it is beyond me. And additionally, while it's not as bad, I saw that the PS5 Pro version of Wilds, while it has it's more stable than the PC version is, it possibly could be doing better if Capcom actually optimized it more and did more with what they should have with the game, because it can get 60 FPS. I think it's on performance mode, but the textures are a bit muddier looking.
Yeah,
but I feel like they could have done better, where you wouldn't have to, you shouldn't have the textures be as bad as they are just to get 60 FPS on a PS5 Pro. I feel like that is definitely a case where everyone, regardless of the platform you're on, is suffering, but the degree you're suffering might not be the same, but you definitely aren't getting what you should be getting. So I think overall it's just Capcom messing up with how they've handled this game. But it's like I said, it's cool. It's great that Wilds is doing well, but I feel like the game did not deserve the success that's getting, and I really hope that Capcom addresses this and fixes this. And I mean, granted, who's to say that this is a part of it or that this is really like a big issue? But I mean, the game also has de novo in it, so who knows how much that's also impacting
Right.
performance. But uh, they just need to fix this. They need to patch this up. They need to do a lot of stuff. And I mean, also considering the fact that the game is performing as it is, and I mean, you can pay up to $110 for this game if you get the deluxe edition, which I mean is insane if you paid that much money and you're getting this type of performance. But yeah, that's essentially everything that I have to say. It's great that the game's that's selling well on one hand because it shows that, for one thing, PC gamers buy games, and PC gaming isn't exactly as dead as console fanboys claim. But it's definitely a shame that the game is performing the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very much with you. I do think that this game does not look or run anywhere near as well as it should, considering how well it's selling. And it just seems like this has been a continuous problem recently with Capcom. And I think the major problem is that the RE engine is just not good for open world games, because Dragon's Dogma 2 had similar issues. And it just seems to be RE engine is not built for these types of games. I would argue Dragon's Dogma, I think that one looks better than Wilds does. Even though it still runs, or at least ran pretty terribly. I don't know if they ever fixed the performance on it. But yeah, I wish that they would do more with it. I'm glad that at least for PlayStation players, they are able to get a fairly stable 60 frames per second for PS5 Pro on performance mode. But like, I was talking to one of the guys in the Discord, the Married to the Games Discord, and he's got the Pro, and he says performance is pretty good. Able to get a pretty stable 60, but he was the first person I saw to call out how bad the textures were on the Pro in performance mode. And with him calling it out, that's saying something, because he's more picky about textures and that sort of thing. But actually, I would say he's probably one of the more picky hardcore PlayStation guys, who's actually willing to call out PlayStation when stuff is like poorly optimized and that sort of thing. And yeah, so I mean, I know he's still been playing the game, and others I've talked to have also been playing the game, most of them being much less picky about frame rate and visuals. I think a lot of them are actually probably playing in just in standard fidelity mode, because they care more about visuals than they do about frame rate, which is fine. I mean, if that's how you feel about the game, then that's perfectly fine, I guess. I mean, I think it's kind of more a situation where it is, you don't know what you're missing, and in some cases people they choose to not know what they're missing. And I say that not like, oh, I'm trying to insult these people. I'm saying also because there were times where I picked the Switch version over PC version because of the fact that I wanted a portable version, and I knew that the Switch version was going to look and run worse, but I also knew that if I didn't experience the PC version, then I could enjoy the Switch version without thinking as much about how much worse it looks. And then once I actually played the PC version, I'm like, holy crap, this is so much better. Like I remember, Doom 2016 being one of those, and Ghost Runner was another one. Ghost Runner especially. Ghost Runner was like, it was dramatic how much worse it looked and played on the Switch compared to how it looked and played on PC, and just the massive difference in frame rate plus being able to play that game with mouse and keyboard was like huge. And I with Doom 2016 I found, because of how much better mouse and keyboard was for that game, and of course having the much higher frame rate, I could play on the higher difficulty, and I found that it was actually easier than playing on the normal difficulty on the Switch, just because better frame rate, better controls. Though I will at least give credit to the Switch version having gyro controls for the aiming, because that definitely made a big difference. But obviously still nowhere near as good as mouse and keyboard. So that sidetrack aside, going back to the main topic here with Steam hitting 40 million concurrent players. Yes, of course, Monster Hunter Wilds is certainly part of that, but it's still, like you said, this is a good way to demonstrate that PC gaming is not dead, like so many people have been trying to say, that it's still very, very much alive. And I think that there is a real possibility that this is going to be a driving factor for console developers to start putting their games day and date on PC more and more. Now, is Nintendo going to start doing it anytime soon? No. Now, I would like to see them do it. I mean, I would like to see them realize, hey, we got this massive install base on PC, a bunch of people who are not going to buy the Switch, and we could just put these games on PC, sell them like gangbusters, and then people who want to keep paying for our inferior hardware will continue to do so. But since hell has not frozen over yet, I think it's going to be a long time before we see that happen. Yeah, either way, I mean, I'm glad to see that Steam is doing as well as it is. And while I wish that we could have a better product with Monster Hunter Wilds, and I'm hoping Capcom will actually fix it. I mean, even if they just removed Denuvo, it would probably make a drastic difference. It wouldn't necessarily fix all the visual issues, because more of the visual issues I think are just the way the game's designed, that it's not designed as well as it should be, that the textures could be drastically improved. But the performance issues, I bet removing Denuvo would have a massive impact across the board. So anyway, that's all I have to say on that.
Nothing further from me.
All right, sounds good. All right, you want to talk about these Xbox 360 PC ports?
Yeah, so recently there was I saw this through a Discord channel. Someone shared this tweet talking about how there is a recompiling tool for the Xbox 360 to make native PC versions of Xbox 360 games. And this is very similar to what we saw with the N64, how you had Zelda Ocarina of Time, how you had, I think before that, Super Mario 64, I think Perfect Dark and Majora's Mask, Star Fox 64, and all of the other games that are currently in development for getting PC ports. The same thing is happening, except I think as opposed to each game having its own compiler, this is a recompiler that should work for any Xbox 360 game. And this is pretty much a huge game changer in that sense, because like I said before you had the recompilers that were dedicated for each individual game. From what I can tell based on what I've read and seen, this is going to be essentially one size fits all. I mean, you have to sort of decompile the game and then, figure out how to recompile it through there. But you have the one tool you'll need to get all that done, which is great. And also, one game actually has been fully recompiled, and that has been Sonic Unleashed. Um, that one is also completely playable from beginning to end, from what I've seen out there. But more games could and most likely will come as a result of that. But that is essentially the gist of things. Before I dive into my thoughts, what are yours?
I guess my big thing is I'm curious how many Xbox 360 games never made it over to PC. I mean, I know Sonic Unleashed is one of those, at least until now. I know that like Blue Dragon was one as well. But honestly, I don't know beyond that. I mean, like I know that there are games for sure. I just don't know which ones because I never really paid close attention. Either way, I think this is fantastic. I kind of wish that this had happened before Red Dead came to PC, because then you could have just had a native version of Red Dead, probably with better optimization across the board. Not that I've been unsatisfied with the optimization. I think that it actually looks and runs really well. I can't remember actually if I install that on my desktop. I feel like I did. I'm pretty sure I did. I mean, I know I installed it on the Steam Deck and played it some there. I think I did it on my desktop as well. But anyway, yeah. So I'll be curious to see what happens with this. This could be a motivator for me to grab some 360 games just for the sake of being able to play, rip the games and be able to, play them on my PC natively, not have to deal with emulation. That's all I got.
Yeah. I definitely agree. This definitely is sort of a game changer in that sense, because especially to your point you're saying about not needing an emulator, this having a native PC port will be less system intensive. Not having to worry about, is my PC powerful enough to emulate it? No, you have a direct sort of native port of the game where it's much more optimized to run on hardware, so you don't have to worry about needing, beefier hardware just to get the games to run properly. And thinking about it in a sense, at least with the N64 games, you could technically also probably get native ports that are available for, like, say, or more optimized, I should say, for the Steam Deck, for example, because we've seen, or at least I've seen, different builds of these games specifically designed for the Steam Deck. So seeing something like that come along, definitely makes things more interesting in that aspect. And also going to back to your point about possibly having better optimized version of Red Dead Redemption, other PC games could possibly receive better optimized versions. For example, I saw someone mention one time the Deadly Premonition 1 and 2. Like, the way those games are horrible on PC. They're not optimized at all. But if someone were to recompile the Xbox 360 version, which I've heard from a couple people saying is one of the better versions of the game, if they recompile that, you would have a new PC version that would be closer to the original one, and you can still, have the different versions where or have features where you have like possibly better textures and like higher resolution and frame rate and stuff like that, and maybe even other types of support like widescreens or ultra widescreen support. But overall, you would just have a better quality of life improvements than the actual official PC version, which is kind of cool to think about. Now, I will say, at first I thought this would be great for one game, but I realized that's an Xbox One game unless there was a 360 version, which was the Rare Replay bundle, because I feel like there were a lot of games in the Rare Replay, which, I mean, technically some of them were, from N64 and, older Xbox games, but I feel like that's the one game that Microsoft, I mean, of course, they never ported Halo 5, but that's like one of the that's one of the main Xbox games that I really wanted to get ported over to PC. Um, so if that was available on the 360, I would really want that one to get recompiled, because I feel like there are a lot of good games in that collection that are just worth playing, and especially considering the fact that I believe they updated the control schemes. So, like, for example, games that were on the N64, like Banjo-Kazooie, and then also Jet Force Gemini, which is a game I enjoyed playing in particular, and maybe even also with like Perfect Dark, the original one. If they update the controls, I would love to have that playable on PC. So I'm hoping that that comes around eventually. And one thing also I thought about is the fact that if we're getting N64, if we have the N64 recompiled games, and now we're having a Xbox 360 recompiler, eventually could we get this type of thing for other consoles as well? Like,
Yeah,
becoming
PS3.
Oh my goodness.
PS3 would be, I mean, like 360 I think is cool, but PS3 would be peak, because there are so many games that are trapped on the PS3 that just, they are so difficult to emulate properly, and it would be incredible to like get the infamous games, for example. Heck, we could just even get the Uncharted trilogy. I mean, it's possible that that's already playable through Shad PS4. I haven't looked into it, but things like that, Ratchet and Clank games, getting versions of those that run better, actually being able to run like into the Nexus at 60 frames per second, because currently the way it's set up, at least last I checked, and it's been a while since I checked, but that game you cannot get above 30 frames per second, even on powerful hardware, because it's hard locked at 30, and that game would be so much better if it was a higher frame rate. For me, the big thing is infamous games.
But yeah, it just really made me wonder, could we eventually see recompilers for other systems? And I mean, if that's the case, I mean, do we eventually see the case where perhaps sometime down the road we don't even have a need for emulators? I mean, we'll probably still have a need, or definitely, especially for some people who might still want to try it just because. But I mean, could we even have a point where this overshadows emulation, because we get essentially native supports? Maybe, but well, we will definitely have to see. But hey, I just think this project is great in general.
Yeah, for sure. All right, good stuff. All right, so we got this other story that's pretty big deal, at least for us. Hideki Kamiya, who of course is the creator of franchises such as Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, and Okami, was also in charge of a little game that was supposed to be exclusive to the Xbox One called Scalebound. And it's an action RPG. I can't remember all the details. I just remember was a Dante-like hero and dealt with dragons and stuff, and it looked cool. But it got canceled back in 2017. And Kamiya, let me find specifically what he says here. He was reminiscing about the development of Scalebound while watching YouTube videos. Never made it to release, but even now he still feels proud of it. In the video, Kamiya is seen explaining to his colleagues that the protagonist has headphones on a smartphone despite being in a fantasy world with dragons. Some of this is not really important. Okay. So. Kamiya had been quoted as saying, although it wasn't in the video that they had, that he'd love to make Scalebound again someday. And Kamiya recently then retweeted the video with a message to Xbox or to Phil Spencer. Let's do it, Phil. Let's remake that game. And so, in short, basically, Hideki Kamiya wants to revive this project. Now, I'm not sure exactly what kind of rights he has for it, since it was a Platinum Games project and he's no longer with Platinum. But I mean, it's possible that maybe because the Scalebound was owned by Microsoft, since they were funding it, that maybe that would be something that he would have the option to, and that it wouldn't specifically be tied to Platinum. But either way, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is definitely a bit of a surprise to see. I mean, I haven't heard about this game in such a long time because of the fact that, you know, it was dead. And honestly, this is one of the few games where, you know, even back when I was a Nintendo fanboy, I was like, this seems kind of interesting. Like it didn't make me go out and buy an Xbox, but, you know, it turned my head and made me think, this seems kind of cool. But, you know, of course, the game was canceled, and unfortunately, nothing else ever came out of it. I wouldn't mind seeing this game revived. Whether or not it actually does happen, and, you know, similar to what you were saying before, I'm not certain if Microsoft has any sort of rights or claims to Scalebound. If they do, then, you know, the ball is essentially in their court. But, you know, if Phil sees this tweet, you know, and thinks, you know, maybe I should reach out and maybe we can have a discussion, that would be cool. And I think in the article near the end, well, it's from last September, but Phil Spencer was asked by the Japanese publication Game Watch if Scalebound being revived was possible, and then it says that he reportedly said with a smile that there's currently nothing to say about Scalebound. Well, I mean, who knows? Maybe, you know, that's his sly way of saying we could be discussing things. That would be cool. That would be great if that was going to happen. And I mean, hey, you know, bring the team back together again. Even if you're not getting Platinum Games to work on it, you know, if you have the guy who's going to direct the game, that if you bring him on board, that could probably work. And I mean, it's better to try, I would say, because I think this game had potential promise based on the premise alone, and I'm for it. I'm definitely for it. And also, I think one thing which was kind of a problem maybe is the fact that the game probably was a bit too ambitious for the hardware at the time, right. Based on what they were saying. And especially, I mean, I remember talking about saying like how I think it was this game, if not, oh no, it was that one game that began with a C. It was like the third game in the series, and they were having what's his name, Terry Crews, like promote the game, but
oh yes, oh gosh. Yeah, it's on the tip of my brain. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh man, I feel like I should.
It will come to mind, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking.
Yeah. So essentially, what I know that one reason why the game possibly failed at the time was because of the hardware limitations. Because I do remember Phil Spencer talking about how the cloud was going to be a huge factor as far as like with the cloud helping with these games, with Scalebound, and that one game that
Crackdown was the name of it.
Crackdown, that's like Crackdown 3. I remember he was going to say like the cloud was going to help with these types of games. And essentially, the Xbox One's going to be, I can't remember the exact number, but it was at least 3 or 4 times as powerful as the console was because of the cloud and how it's going to work, and with like the environments and how it's going to impact just like environmental damage and stuff. And that obviously didn't happen at all. But yeah, I think that the hardware definitely wasn't where it should have been for Scalebound. So maybe on modern hardware on the Series X, Series S, and I mean definitely on PC, um, whatever ambitions they had then should definitely be more than reasonable now to be achieved. So if they want to revive this game, I'm definitely all for it because I think there definitely was potential here, and I would love to see them have a crack at it. I would love to see what it was they actually had in mind when they were making this game to begin with. So yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. The one fear that comes to mind is if they decided, well, since this would probably end up being an Unreal Engine 5 game, if they ended up running into
Oh.
exactly the same problem, except this time it's just with a different engine. But yeah, the infinite power of the cloud was their claim back before the Xbox One launched, and that was actually a potential name for the podcast here too before we settle on Orange Box. But um, yeah, it's I hope that this game does in fact happen. I think it would be great. I've enjoyed the Kamiya games I played. I mean, Bayonetta 1 and 2 were great, and Okami was great. Devil May Cry 1 was great. 2 was not so much. A little bit I played of 3 was great as well. And I don't remember how much involvement he had after the first game. But regardless, like, the other thing is him saying there's currently nothing to say about Scalebound and not just straight up blocking them. You know, to me, that's a potential indicator that there's actually something happening, because you know he's very block happy. Granted, this was. Oh, you know what? Now that I look at this again, it wasn't Kamiya that they asked this to. It was Phil Spencer they asked, and I thought that it was Kamiya that they asked. So, yeah, he said there's currently nothing to say about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Either way, I like the idea of this. If it never happens, it's not like we're losing anything. You know, we already lost the game a long time ago, and if it never comes back, it never comes back. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. As a quick side note, while during the time that I had lost you, I did look up, and Guardians of the Galaxy, what it was that happened is, yes, for one, it didn't sell as well as they had hoped, even though it has sold around 8 million copies as of sometime last year. Actually, maybe even further back than that, it was at around 8 million. But the rights for it, I mean, all of it was purchased by Embracer Group. So then it's just waiting to see if they'll do anything with it. But like the Twitter, the /X page for the game has, you know, periodically tweeted out about the game, and I mean about the previous one, and when it's gone on sale and number of players and that sort of thing. So it's not impossible, but we'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, that is all I have to say about Scalebound and side topics related to it. So is there anything else from you on that?
No, sir.
All right, so let's get into remaining topics for tonight that are not news topics, but first we have a listener question, once again from Beer Money Vic. His question for us is, you have to spend the next 3 hours cleaning the house. You are allowed to listen to music, but limited to one artist/band. Who are you choosing? And your family isn't home to crowd your vibes. So. Now, I know for you it's a bit of a different issue because, you know, you don't have wife and kids, but you do occasionally have like your niece and nephew over, or, you know, family in general.
Yeah. The issue I have is just limiting to one artist, considering the fact that I normally have my music grouped into playlists based on themes, depending on what type of music I want. So limiting to just one, it's just too hard. It's just too hard for me to really nail it down to. So oh man, I mean. Gosh, yeah, I really, yeah, I really can't say who or I would limit it to, or even what I would limit it to, because I just have everything. Yeah, I will have to circle back to that and think about some more, but I want to hear your who you would listen to.
All right, so I've thought about this a bit too, because I mean, realistically, there aren't a whole lot of situations where I will actually listen to music, even when I'm by myself. Usually, I'll be listening to podcasts or YouTube, stuff. That's what I listen to more often than not. But if I had to limit it to one artist or band, depending on my mood, it could, if I was wanting something that was actual like regular music, I mean that wasn't like video game music, I would probably pick something like potentially Blindside, because I do really like the vast majority of their albums, even though they haven't made an album in 14 years. I think that's one potential thing. Or maybe the older Linkin Park albums, because I really like Up Through Meteora. I really stopped listening to them after that. But, I mean, Hybrid Theory and Reanimation, which is just basically like remixes of the songs from Hybrid Theory. Although I guess technically that's not just Linkin Park, so that would be that's sort of cheating. But Meteora is fantastic. But yeah, so it would probably be one of those if I was doing like non-video game music. If I was doing video game music that I had to limit it to one artist or band, it would probably be going with either Yasunori Mitsuda, because he's done Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I think he's done some other ones too that I can't think of off the top of my head, but those ones especially. But then another could be Hiroyuki Sawano, who did the Xenoblade Chronicles X soundtrack, because that's also an excellent soundtrack. So Yasunori Nishiki could be another option as well, who did the Octopath soundtracks, and those are extremely good. So that I think that's my answer. But like, I guess, yeah, I guess realistically, like if I still had a sound system, which I haven't had since we moved, then I would probably blast music. But otherwise, I'd probably just put in my earbuds and put in both of my earbuds instead of just one, and then enjoy the music without it having to blast in the house, and just, blast it in my ears with my great earbuds that I like. So
now I thought about it a little bit more, and I think what I would do is I would just have J Music Ensemble, which is the group I mentioned like some time ago as a recommendation, which is just jazz cover versions of video game music, and also I think a couple anime songs as well. So I think because I've listened to them every now and then while I'm just like cooking dinner and stuff like that, I think just because for the task that is being done, I think that's something good just to have us like background music playing. So just playing different music, like hearing different music from Kirby, playing some older Super Mario Brothers music playing. I think there might have been a Xenoblade cover as well, but I can't recall. But I feel like just for cleaning, I think that's something that would fit the tone and mood that I'm just like, yeah, this is fine to have playing while I'm doing that.
That does remind me, though, another great option would be Family Jewels, who does lots of metal covers of all sorts of video game music. I mean, he did like a bunch of Xenoblade Octopath Traveler covers that are amazing. And like I bought his album that had those, and it was like 30 songs that he did just for that one game for the first Octopath Traveler. And then if you add in all the other stuff he's done, that would give a massive amount of stuff, because he has some really excellent covers. I mean, there's so many great covers out there. Like lately I've been getting into some Xenoblade Chronicles X covers, because there's been both artists that have just done it over the years, of various songs, both vocal and just instrumental pieces. But lately, with the definitive edition coming up later this month, there's been people doing covers of some of those songs as well. And it's just like, yes, such a great soundtrack. So, yeah, good stuff. All right, did you have another topic you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, just a question I actually sort of had, which is something that it's something that something that has happened to me before in the past, and so I sort of wanted to ask if this has, or at least had, happened to you as well. And that is there a console you wish, or you wished you had gotten into or experienced growing up that you never got to?
I would actually say probably the PS2. Mostly just because, like, I didn't get the PS2 until 2006. At least I didn't have. I played some, like, I'd borrowed a friend's PS2 a couple times and played like that's how I played Kingdom Hearts the first time, or really that's the only time I played all the way through the original Kingdom Hearts. But by the time I got the PS2, I really got it for Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. And there are so many games that I've played since then, like Ratchet and Clank and Sly Cooper, and to a lesser extent, like God of War, Devil May Cry, various others I can't think of off the top of my head. But games that were just outside of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts that I just didn't experience. I either never experienced, period, or experienced very late. And I mean, of course, it's also been cool experiencing them late, because of the fact that in many cases I've been able to play them on the Steam Deck, or on the Switch or something like that. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 were on the PS2. Okami. Just like there's so many games that I wish I had been able to experience more. I mean, technically even GameCube, because GameCube I also got late. I mean, I played more of that before I actually got one of my own, but even then I still didn't play a whole lot of games on there. It was basically just for first party Nintendo games. That's really all I played on there, and even then I didn't play all of them, because I didn't play Mario Sunshine until, well, I didn't really play it. Like, I started playing it a little bit on the GameCube, but I didn't like really play it until I got it on Switch and ended up loving it. But yeah, that's my answer. It would be either PS2 or GameCube. More PS2 though.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point about, because I mean, while I definitely thought about these games and it would have been nice to play them, I never thought about the original Ratchet and Clank games, Jak and Daxter, which is something that I feel like, well, it would be nice if Naughty Dog went back to Jak and Daxter, I would say. I mean, they probably won't, because they feel like, I guess they've outgrown the franchise, but it would be nice if they went back to that. But, going back to those older games on the PS2, because I mean, I've played some games on the PS2 via my cousin because he owned a PS1. That's how I experienced PlayStation games and how I experienced PS2 games, but I didn't really play them as much. At least I mainly played the multiplayer games which had multiplayer in them. But like for the more single player games, I never really experienced them. So it kind of would be nice to play those games or go back and try them out for the first time.
All right. Good stuff. Well, anything else before we get into our recommendations and dissuasions?
No, sir.
All right, start us off.
My recommendation is going to be very straightforward, and that is play a game that you enjoy. I feel like, especially in more recent times, it's definitely so easy to get caught up in the negative, and especially games which we dislike, or games which we think that are going to be horrible. But I think that because of that, it tends to overshadow games which we could enjoy, or games that we know we enjoy, or games that we actually like. So I just want to encourage you all to play a game that you enjoy, play a game you like, play a game that is just a game you can go back to and that you can experience or re-experience, that you just enjoy, because we've all got a finite amount of time, so why not enjoy the moments we can. So that's my recommendation.
Very good. All right. Well, first of all, I'm going to say this because I'm going to forget if I don't. My first recommendation is with the PC version of Guardians of the Galaxy. If you have stutters with the game, what you need to do to fix that, it's actually very, very simple. You just have to turn off VSync and uncap the frame rate. That fixed my problems, because I did have some stuttering initially. And once I found that, I tried that out, and then I didn't have any problems after that. So that's my number one recommendation with Guardians of the Galaxy on PC. But my number two recommendation is play Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a great game. It often goes on sale. I think I may have gotten it for like $15. I may have gotten it cheaper. I don't remember which it was. But either way, it's a great game. It's well worth playing. It is playable on the Steam Deck. You do have to make that one modification in order to get in order for it to actually run properly, by putting the VRAM at a higher thing. But otherwise, it's great. Well worth playing. And just a side note, that gameplay I sent you earlier for Expedition 33 on the Steam Deck got me excited about it, because 30 frames per second isn't the best, but since it's primarily a turn-based game and it is a brand new game, it looked good enough for me. Like I'm happy with what I saw there. Very interested in that one. So, and theoretically, since it isn't released yet, they could still further optimize it to make it run better. So hopefully that will end up being the case. I just wish there was actually a demo for everybody, because I would love to download the demo and check it out. But at least right now there is not. So, but yeah, that's what I got for recommendations. So give me your dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be, do not buy, or at least in the current state that they're in and also the prices, do not buy an RTX 50 series card right now, and that's assuming, of course, you can find one. And I guess to a further extent, don't buy a second-hand one, because those things are overpriced through the roof as a result, because of scalpers and resellers. So definitely don't buy those. And I also would say, do not buy an RX 9070 vanilla card, just because the XT version is only $50 more. So I mean, if you're going to pay for something that has possibly substantially worse performance, why not just pay the extra $50 and get the better performing card, which I mean possibly is what AMD was planning on doing to help incentivize buying an the XT version. But yeah, I mean, granted, we don't have 9070 numbers yet because those reviews haven't come out yet. But just based on what we've seen so far, I wouldn't recommend the vanilla 9070. But yeah, those are my dissuasions.
All right. Well, my dissuasion is don't buy Monster Hunter Wilds on PC currently unless you have a super powerful rig. And even then, be aware it is poorly optimized. It does not run well. I mean, if you have a super powerful rig, it will probably run just fine for you, but it's not going to run as well as it should. So I definitely want to dissuade you from buying Monster Hunter Wilds in its current state, at least on PC. On console, I think it might be more worthwhile, which is one of the rare situations that that's the case. Not that it's great, but the one thing with that is that you at least know exactly what you're getting if you buy it on console versus with PC. It's kind of a mixed bag across the board. One of those rare situations when I have to agree with console fanboys. Just saying that this is one situation where it is a little bit technically better, quote unquote, optimized for consoles. Or it's more consistent with consoles anyway. So we'll say that. Though from what I have seen, not surprisingly, the performance in performance mode on the PS5, the base PS5, is about what we expected. 30 to 40 frames per second is pretty average. So, yay. At least the Pro runs it better. So, but yeah, that's what I got. All right, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. Did an unboxing video on some comics earlier this week. I don't have any plans right now for the next video, although this will definitely be a while before it actually gets here. But the thing I was mentioning earlier, that is definitely a video that I'm going to be doing, but of course it'll just depend on when it actually arrives since it's coming from overseas. But yeah, we'll see what happens when that happens.
Nice. Sounds good. All right, well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. No new videos this week. I am hopefully going to be starting work on recording everything for the next comparison that I'm doing for Freedom Wars and Freedom Wars Remastered. We'll see if I have time to do any recording this weekend. I'm not really sure if I'm going to have that time, but if I do, then I will at least get started on that part of it. I'm thinking that more likely than not, even if it takes me a little bit longer to get this recorded in some ways, I don't think it'll take me as long to get it edited because, for one, I have a better idea of what I'm doing in general with that, both on the video side and the audio side. But number two, because of the fact that I'm not going to be recording 2 hours of gameplay like I had to do with Persona 4 Golden. So those issues in and of themselves make a huge difference. And of course, the fact that I don't have to worry about kid noise being a problem that affects the recording itself will also make a big difference because I can just have direct audio. So it'll be better from that standpoint as well. But yeah, there's that. I also have my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's youtube.com/@NABD and no new recipes have gone up just yet. I am hoping to have my next one up next week. It's just been kind of a busier time, and I just haven't really been able to get to it. But then we also have, of course, the YouTube channel for the podcast, which the video version of the podcast comes out 7 a.m. Central Time every Friday morning, or 7 a.m.-ish, depending on whether or not I have issues with the uploads. But there you can not only see our beautiful faces, but you can see clips from the games we've been playing, as well as games we're discussing in the whole thing, and all of the same content you get in the audio-only version, which goes up on all major podcast platforms every Friday at 12 a.m. Central Time. Once again, barring any issues with uploads. And that's on platforms such as Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and other places that I can't think of off the top of my head, but it's basically anywhere where you can find podcasts. So there's all of that. And then we have the Orange Box Pod Clips channel, which is clips from all the different segments from our episodes. If you are not into listening to a 2.5 hour podcast every week and you just want to get the highlights of the various discussion topics, that's youtube.com/@theorangeboxpodclips. And I think that's basically everything. There are going to be channels on Rumble coming up, but they're not yet ready to go. So when they are ready to go, I will announce the pages for those as well. And if YouTube will let me, I will link to those. I'm not positive if they will or not. They might block those links because it's a competing platform, but we'll kind of see how that goes. So either way, that should be everything. All right. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zaracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, get yourself some authentic Mexican food. Orange Box Podcast out.